public speaking time for items relating to the agenda. Trevor had actually failed to meet the time frame for the submissions. So we are enabling him to use another door to present it to public speaking time, and then I'll move if the councillors are in support to accept it. Trevor?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay. I'm sorry. I think I'll need to get Sophie to help me one day with working this system. A high number of elderly, the number of elderly is projected to increase to about 32% in coming years. And as we know, walking is a recommended exercise for the elderly. The council says in its draft bylaw that it has a fence-to-fence responsibility, but it has little to say about footpaths. We think that the bylaw should acknowledge that the prime users of footpaths are pedestrian, wheelchair users and low-speed mobility aids. There should be a speed limit for e-bikes and e-scooters on footpaths. 12 kilometres per hour seems to be the common speed in other jurisdictions. There should be a requirement to give a warning when approaching pedestrians from behind. There should be a requirement that rubbish bins or cars should be banned from restricting the use of footpaths. We consider these all age-friendly actions. We have been advised that some of our comments about pedestrian crossings is the responsibility of Waikanae rather than us. So that's my submission.
Right. Question. Councillor Randall.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Trevor. One of the submissions you make is that you recommend that all shared paths and walkways be clearly signposted as to being shared.
Yep.
Right? Would you like to mention why you think that should be clearly signposted, apart from the obvious?
Just to make it clear to all users that it is. I don't know whether you've seen the photos that I've sent past to the council this morning. But there's one there where the footpath is about 3 feet wide, and it's a shared footpath. That seems a bit silly to me.
Councillor Holbrook.
A couple of questions, Trevor. Thank you for your submission today, and you made it in, so that's great. So the number 2, the pedestrian safety at light-controlled crossings. Are you aware of any that at present are a concern in terms of the time on those crossings?
Some of those photos will show you. I believe but personally I'm not. That was added in by one of my committee members.
Oh, okay. No, I hadn't had a chance to look at those. That's great, thank you. And also, just as a Ramati resident and kind of referring to one of your points, which is about the safety of crossings, do you have any comment around the crossing on Poplar Ave? At the end of the cycleway, there's been a lot of community concern around that. Do you have any comment around that?
My concern is, we have a cycleway from through the Queen Elizabeth Park that then moves on to a very narrow pathway and comes eastwards to join up with the other, with another part cycleway, that it's pretty, if you see, when you see the photo, you'll see that it's pretty ridiculous, sort of pathway. We did comment earlier on about crossings during a previous exercise, and around that area, and we think that because of the curvature of the road, that it's pretty unsafe for pedestrians.
Yeah, that's good to hear. We've been hearing a lot from the cycling fraternity around that, so it's good to hear that perspective from you as well. Thank you very much, Trevor.
Councillor Henford.
Hey, kia ora, Trevor. I'm more than happy to help you with your tech, or one of our volunteers, student volunteer army, could come and pop around and give you a hand, I'm sure. Hey, just on kind of that first point you make about how you see there being a glaring omission in regard to the safety of pedestrians in the proposed bylaw, do you see that kind of precedence is given to cars and the movement of cars over prioritising the movement of people walking and cycling kind of generally through the bylaw? Obviously it is, transport traffic bylaw, so there is that kind of precedent that's set through the context of it. But do you see that cars are kind of being valued more than people who are travelling in cars, their journey might be being kind of valued more above those who are walking and cycling just by way of safety and ease of getting from A to B?
I think I'd prefer to say that there's a lack of interest in footpaths and pedestrians.
Yeah, thank you. That clarifies it very nicely. Thanks, Trevor.
Right, Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Trevor, for being available today and raising some of these issues here. So, through Grey Power, I'm interested to hear, how many concerns and complaints you have raised about, for example, you look at the one of the abusive footpaths where the wheelie bins are on it. But when you look at, if you're in a wheelchair, for example, or on a moped, having to navigate going over the lip of the curb and channel there, both on the footpath as well as onto the road, do you have people complaining about how that's really, really difficult, or people are quite happy with the general status of that part of the footpath?
We hear that people are generally very, very careful in those areas. There's two things that concern them. That is crossings from people's properties. All of a sudden you go along and then there's a dip where the cutaway has been put in for the car to come out of, and also the crossings at street corners. They're not. They're quite tricky for some.
Thank you.
Right. No other questions, Trevor. Thank you for taking the time to make the submission. I will now, while you're here, I'm going to move that the Council accepts the late submission on the proposed Traffic Bylaw 2021 submitted by Grey Power. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Martin Holliday, would you like to second that? Thank you. So all those in favour say aye. Those against? Carried. Well, why would you have a conflict of interest? That is not a substantial conflict of interest. Yeah, so you want that noted? Okay, thank you for being upfront about that. Do you think the rest of us should join? I should join, eh? Right, thank you for that. We're now on to item number 9, reports. 9.1 Annual Report for 2020-2021. Mark DeHaas. Well,
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, good morning. So just to put my apologies in for Jo Bryan, she would ordinarily be taking you through this report, but this morning she's actually attending an online feedback session with the OAG regards comment and feedback on long-term plans and consultation documents. So we look forward to hearing from her the feedback that we receive and how we can change things going forward. But look, without further ado, welcome to Brian Jackson, the chair of our Audit and Risk Subcommittee. I do intend to pass the baton over to Brian to address you, as you would have seen in the report, the small report with the 197-page attachment. In essence, the report is seeking that you do adopt the annual report, but there's a recommendation from the Audit and Risk Subcommittee, so it's only fitting that Mr Jackson addresses you. But just before I do hand over, I just wanted to say a couple of things. I will take the report as read. The annual report has been a labour of love for many months for council officers as well as the senior leadership team, and in particular the Audit and Risk Subcommittee have had to go through it in painstaking detail. There was a step change. We're very proud of it. We hope that you are too. It is a document of solidarity and for the most part shows outstanding performance. We did make some changes. There is a combined message from the Mayor and the Chief Executive. Believe it or not, it is shorter than previous years, and we're particularly proud of the second part, which is what we call the performance. You'll note that there's a balanced scorecard, which gives a really nice overview of our financial and non-financial performance. We've continued to include the financial overview, and the purpose of that is we know that the financial statements at the back are really boring and dry and hard to follow. So that financial overview is there so that members of the public can understand in layman terms how we've performed financially. We've overhauled the summary of our service level performance and our KPIs, and we've also included the resident opinion survey results for the year. Other areas that we've expanded is the people and capability part at the back, and we've also given a nice fresh new look to the governance commentary, which is everything about yourselves. So without further ado, I'd really like to hand over to Brian.
okay, can I just say my apologies for not acknowledging your presence at the beginning of the meeting.
Happens at home too, Your Worship.
Anything else you want to confess?
Thank you, Mark. Well, I'm just going to go through where we got to. The subcommittee fully considered the draft annual report on the 2nd of November and requested some small changes. For example, changing Tangata Whanua vision title to Te Reo, and noting that the Mahara Gallery project commences in November 2021. I guess it has commenced in this.
Yes, it has.
Oh, excellent. Overall, the subcommittee were very impressed with the draft annual report, in particular the performance overview setting out in layman terms the council's financial and non-financial performance, and we're very pleased to see the upfront focus and transparency reporting the resident survey satisfaction results for the financial year. They are what they are, and they have been reported exactly like that. An extension was granted under the Act recognising the COVID impacts for councils to have until the 31st of December to adopt their annual reports. Given the pressure placed on staff, it was very sensible that council utilised the extension and extra time taken to fully reflect and it's fully reflected in the quality of the end result, in our opinion. The Act requires both a full annual report and summary of the annual report that describes the Council's financial and non-financial performance for 2021. And as Mark alluded to, I think it's, if you look back to last report, it's a step change. A clean, unqualified audit opinion has been received and is included in the reports. Following Central Government's announcement mandating their Three Waters reform, all councils are required by OAG to include a standardised subsequent events note advising the public of that, and the audit opinion now contains that. So that's in there, as the same, I believe, for all councils have the same. Some key highlights for the year we felt were the district plan became operative after 9 years and 900 submissions. The Kapiti Recovery Plan and the refreshed Kapiti Coast Economic Development Strategy and Implementation Plan were put into action. The 21 to 41 long-term plan was adopted. The Climate Emergency Action Framework was agreed to guide mitigation and adaptation, and I guess that'll be an ongoing challenge, that one, as will the Coastal Adaptation Panel and their difficulty, I would imagine, with dealing with that. Council was recognised by Tutu EnviroCare for reducing carbon emissions. The 20th anniversary of the Kapiti Art Trail, I don't know how it went this year with the weather, but it seemed there were a few people around. The Otaki Civic Theatre and Parapram Memorial Hall refurbishments were completed. Alongside these achievements came the ongoing challenge to manage the effects of COVID-19. As much as we'd like to get that out of our vocabulary, Mark, we clearly can't, which did impact delivery of some services, library borrowings, construction, etc., and that's reflected in the financials. The Council ended the financial year in a strong financial position with a surplus of 6.9 million, mainly from unplanned central government stimulus funding, completed 89% of capital spend of 32.9 million and retained the Standard & Poor's AA rating. I think the surplus is well covered in the report because, you know, I would imagine a lot of our customers, when they see the council has a surplus, would immediately think they were paying too many rates. But I think that's been well covered. So the committee would be very keen to move the adoption of the annual report. And finally, just a personal comment. I've noticed it's the first time I've been involved in the long-term annual plans, and it was an education for me. I do apologise for not being available for the public submissions, but possibly that was a good thing. It has been an incredibly busy time for councillors and staff, and all should be, I think, very proud of what has been achieved, especially during these funny old times. So, thank you.
Right. Question time. No questions? Councillor Coates.
Come on, guys, I'll leave it a few minutes. I'm not always the one first with lots of questions. Look, I've got 7 that are very succinct, but I want to just highlight the fact that I think overall a great document and great performance. So the fact that I've got 7 isn't a criticism of the performance or the document.
We are happy you haven't got a dozen.
And also because I'm on the editorial team, I'm not speaking to specific, spelling or other bits. It's a little bit hard just with how the document is too in terms of getting to the pages, so just bear with me. Page 23 of the digital document. Sorry. And it's repeated there further. I can't remember exactly what page number, but around to Uruhi. And given that the independent report talked about the constant beat of information, I wondered whether we could include in there that the purpose of the facility is always to promote, is also to promote the district. It refers to telling the story, but I think if we're trying to reinforce that message to people, it's around the actual, it's providing a facility to talk about the attractions and so forth right across the district. Is that? I'm sorry, I'm just trying
through Mr. Mayor, Council. That's on agenda page 23.
Correct.
Yep.
Can I just check with you, Your Worship, how we do this? Because that in itself isn't really a question.
No. Just go to
page 42. Look, I did test this one with a couple of people, and I'm happy to accept if others think that it isn't a valid kind of comment. But on that chart, just using that as an example, when I said to a few members of my team, what does that 98% with a downward arrow mean to you? That their immediate take on that was saying that it was down by 98%. Now, we might think that that's really clear that it isn't. It's down on 99% the performance for 1920. So I don't know whether we leave it like that or whether there's some further work that we put into it. It's repeated throughout. I guess my concern is that it is just very clear from a layman's perspective what we're trying to say there.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Councillor. That's a very good point. So the options are we obviously either add a bit of text to show that's obviously comparing to the prior year, or we take the arrows out.
Which, to be fair, it does sort of have it in the paragraph at the end of Kapiti, a great place to live, for example. So I'm happy to leave it with the team, but the point is that if we check with a few people and that's what I did, they said, well, it looks to me that it's saying it's down by 98%, surely that can't be right. And others it's 48%, so that's probably less than the 98% one's probably more ambiguous, less ambiguous, sorry. So I'll leave that with the team just around how they might approach that.
Councillor, do you want to give us it'd be easier if you give us a steer so we can remove the arrow.
Look, I didn't actually have a solution for you.
Okay.
Not that I just didn't really have time to thinking of that.
I think if you've raised it, then offline that can be done.
Yeah, that's it. I'm confident the team can just consider that and address it. To be honest, I spent most of my time reading the report. It's page 75. In there, it's just around the Waikanae recycling drop-off, and again, in terms of people reading that, I think it sort of fails to also mention that council is looking at other alternatives through the request from His Worship the Mayor around other recycling solutions, if I recall that correctly. Next one's on page 85. Yeah, these are all in terms of the page numbers. Because the actual report is attached as a embedded PDF, I can only give you the... Oh, actually, so it is... Yeah, of the agenda. So on page 85, if I could, I do want to acknowledge the really good work from the team. I'm not too sure if other elected members picked up on it, but there was work to be done on the aquatic centre, and it required experts from Holland, and the council team have managed to do that work themselves, working remotely with the team from Holland, and I think that's an exceptional effort there from the team. Apart from the fact that it would also save $20,000, but the fact that they worked around that in the COVID environment, I think is exceptional. Just below that, the water egress into the changing rooms that's been identified. I'm mindful, having gone through the Waikanae Library stuff in the Morrison Lowe report, that there was comments in the Morrison Lowe report about issues being made aware to elected members. I don't have a concern that this has not been addressed, but I guess I just want to highlight it as an example where we're being told of water egress, and then we don't do anything about as elected members. That will be brought back, I guess, in terms of making us aware of what the issues were and what the remedies were at the appropriate time. So it's just really, I guess, out of that learnings from the Morrison Lowe stuff. Page 96. Under the town centre, and I might have this one wrong, but under the town centres and connectors project, it refers to the Otaki and Tohoro connector role being delayed. And I didn't think it was, but I might be wrong on that. And then it refers to the same thing again over under the Otaki paragraph. So I wondered whether you just remove the one under the town centres and connectors and look into it, check. And if it's appropriate to stay there, then it's fine. And again, on that same page, it talks about Te Urihi and the opportunity to talk about promoting the district.
Yep.
And then the last two, page 99. The older person's housing unit, it speaks to 16 vacant units, and I know it's been raised before, and I know the team have done an exceptional job in terms of refurbishing the units as they become available. Is 16 a large number? And I know that we've probably asked this every single time. It seems like a lot of empty units. And so, yeah, I don't know whether the group manager is aware whether that's a normal number each year or whether that's on the higher end of being vacant.
It's exceptionally high, and it was due to the circumstances of some of the changes they were making, but we would normally keep it as low as possible.
It was lower? Yeah, okay, thanks, Wayne. And the last one on page 152, again, having sat around the table, I imagine this has obviously come every time, and I maybe just haven't noticed it, but before I get to the page, it's around the property fund in Waikanae.
The Waikanae Property Fund.
Yeah, so my recollection, it's not a thing against Waikanae, but generally the comment's been made that, you know, we've heard other elected members being community board of councillors that when, if that gets sold, could that money stay in Paraparaumu or Otaki, for example? And the response has always been no. You know, we look at things from a district-wide perspective. I was surprised that there's a specific, it says the purpose of the reserve is to fund improvements to council-owned properties in Waikanae. The source of the funds is the proceeds from sale of other council property in the Waikanae ward. So that seems like an exception to the rule that we have throughout the district. Sorry, Jocelyn, that's page 152 of the agenda, page 142 of the report, titled Waikanae Property Fund. It just seems inconsistent with the advice that we've been given around, and it seems like there's a specific set of rules for Waikanae in particular.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, I'll try and answer your question without really being able to answer it. So reserves and special funds are restricted reserves, and certainly in 2014 it's always been there. It has been an issue. You'll note that we, in the passage of time, we have the ability to add additional restricted funds and reserves. So you'll note that there's a self-contingency fund. That wasn't there in 2014. So I know that there are discussions underway with the Waikanae Community Board around what's in it and how that money is spent. But we have been reporting this in terms of our annual report forever and a day. So whether there's a bit of work to come back and explain to you, but there are conversations with the Waikanae Community Board. But it has been there certainly. It precedes 2014.
Sorry, I should have not turned my mic on just and then I'll leave it at that. So could we clarify, if there was, say, for an example, a section sold in Waikanae for $500,000, those funds then stay? Is that how I read it? No. Okay, well, that's the key point.
No, we'll have to double check on the specifics, but I'm pretty sure those are historic proceeds because currently the policy that we follow is exactly what you've set out.
But this has been an ongoing issue that pops up every now and then. I've heard this before. Yeah. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I had just two things to query. On page 14 of the report, I'll start off with. Sorry, thanks. Page 27 of the report makes a statement, we keep average rate increases low at 2.6%. I'm going to query this because the dates of the report, on the 25th of June 2020, the rate of 2.6% was set, and that is outside of the period of this annual report. And yet, within the period of this annual report, the rates of 7.79% were struck. So I am going to query that.
So, through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of the process, we typically adopt the annual plan and set the rates for the following year. So the year in question, 2021, had an average rates increase of 2.6%. The rates have got to be set before 1 July. So you're absolutely right. So the council made the decision that for 2021, the average rates will be 2.6. The team then go away. We do what we need to do so that as of 1 July, those are the rates that you pay. The 7.9% was done last year, but relates to the following year. So it's a timing process. Okay. So it is factually correct that the average rates increase for the annual report period is 2.6%.
Thank you. My second query is the page 19 on the Pakakiriki seawall, I'm wondering if I could suggest some wording changes here. One, that residents are referred to kapiti residents to show that the consultation process would cover the entire district and that was the outcome. B, I'd request that the wording say majority of councillors agreed rather than just councillors agreed, because clearly some of us did not agree with the proposal.
Can't.
No, you can't say that. Did you say that we were all unanimous?
It was the decision of council.
It was passed.
Well, can we put that it was a decision of council, not councillors agreed, because I didn't even accept the LTP.
So we should put that in the LDP.
Well, isn't this when we bring up wording changes?
It's council.
Councillors agreed. Yeah, well, I didn't agree.
No, if you change it to council,
Yeah, council agreed. Yes, that's great.
that's a collective.
Yep, that's great. That's fine. And a suggestion that the artist impression photo be changed to depict what the like-for-like seawall might look like. Just a suggestion. It's 19 of the annual report. And just another question, my last one. The Standards & Poor's AA rating is still 4 or 5 different rating values below the best. And I'm just wondering what, if any specific planning will be done to try and raise that for next year. And you might remember this is a question I do ask quite regularly.
Through you, Mr Mayor, look, we can't go any higher because then we'll be higher than the Crown, the government. So what we want to do is hold on to that credit rating. It's the highest that we can be.
Councillor Holliday.
Through you, Mr Mayor. I've just got a few things, some more clarity and just getting some understanding of, if you don't mind. Page 36 is the first one. Talks to liabilities for the year being $272 million. Mentions that 84% of this is medium and long-term borrowings. I just wanted to check whether that was correct and was perhaps meant to be short-term and long-term borrowings as such, because I know the pre-funding would be, I would have thought, was classified as short-term rather than medium-term.
Yes, so through you, Mr Mayor. So look, that's an excellent question, and it's basically saying long-term in the financial world is typically anything more than 12 months. So we're using medium to say it's up to 12 months, and long-term is beyond 12 months.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, short-term is typically 0 to 3.
Right. Okay.
3 months. 0 to 3 months is short-term. Medium is longer than 3, less than 12, and long-term is beyond 12. So ours are longer than 3 or longer than 12 months.
Okay, cool. That clarifies that. Also, there was in relation to that, there was 44 million left as other liabilities. That's I used the example of monies owed to suppliers. It seemed quite a large figure at 44 million.
So we do accruals-based accounting. Can you point me to the 44 million, Councillor Halliday?
Percentage. Just to work the percentage out, there's about what's it must be 84, 94, about 16-17% difference in the two figures. So it's not a figure that's listed as such.
Yeah, Councillor, happy to take that offline with you. Look, just for the benefit of the room, so. And this does come up as well. So our financial statements are prepared on an accruals basis, not a cash basis. And what that basically means is you account for expenditure when it's incurred, not when it's invoiced or not when it's paid. So the impact that has, particularly with our liabilities, if we've actually incurred the spend or we've received a service but we haven't yet been invoiced for it, we account for that. Yeah. And so that's why our liabilities can be high, which is why in terms of our cash flow statement, the first quarter of the year we have quite a big spend of cash because those invoices that for work that we normally finish at the end of the financial year, we pay for that in the first couple of months of the new financial year. So you typically get a large cash outflow going at the start of the financial year.
which I guess leads on to my next question on page 123, which was cash and cash equivalents. What we had budgeted compared to what we actual was about 11 million, so I'm assuming that that's just a flow through onto that.
Yeah, there's a number of reasons for that through you, Mr. Mayor. We received the last payment of rates for Q4 comes in beginning of June. And typically what happens is we try and anticipate what we're going to actually do in the last month of the financial year, and we anticipate when suppliers are going to pay us. So we were holding more cash than what we had budgeted, and that's simply a timing difference. It's called a temporary timing difference. Suppliers hadn't actually invoiced us, and our standard payment policy is to pay on the 20th of the month following the date of invoice. So we received a large amount of cash came in from rates for the fourth quarter, and we didn't have the invoices from suppliers to typically pay.
Cool, that's cool, thank you. Number 2, on the same page, just across from that, it's talking to payments to employees and suppliers. It's on the right-hand side, but I'm just wondering if there's any chance in future that can be split out. And I do appreciate the breakdown. I do appreciate the breakdowns, which I really did appreciate further on that I knew, and that really does break that down. But even then, it's still just having that definition from the layman's perspective at the first instance, if that's possible.
So through you, Mr. Mayor. So the short answer is no. It can't, okay. And the reason for that is a cash flow statement is the format is prescribed.
Okay. So
last week, when you heard from the Chief Financial Officer, you raised the same question, and he said yes, we could. And the reason for that is it's not an annual report. It doesn't need to meet. Our intention is we model the statutory format so that when you see this at the end of the year, you're familiar with that. So we can break it down on our quarterly finance updates. We can't split it out for you in this because it has to comply with accounting financial reporting standards.
Fair enough. Number 3, just a bit further down the page, talks to purchase of investments. We budgeted 19 million, but we've actually spent about 55. That seems to be quite a disparate difference between budget and what was actually spent.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor. So the purchase of investments relies, what that is it's entirely related to our pre-funding. Right. And so we pre-funded some of our capital works program. So we heard last week that we've pre-funded in part the 2021 CapEx program. But given we know that the current CapEx program of $73 million is so substantial, we've started pre-funding some of this year's capital works program, and so that's why we're over budget. So we'll always look at the market, and when there's when it makes sense to do the pre-funding, we will do that, and that's what we've done.
And would I assume that's also capitalising potentially on the interest rates that are moving against us at the moment? Cool, thank you. Page 124. What have we got here? Sorry. I've put in it. What have I got down here? No, I'm going to leave that one. Oh, hang on. No. I didn't have that. No, I've actually mixed my references up. No, sorry.
You're doing really good.
Yeah. Apologies. Rightio, on page 124. We had a purchase. What did we sell for? That gave us a $635,000 gain. Gross proceeds from sale of assets. Third box down. Just noted a sale, and I did note in one of your boxes further down, it did break it down to a land sale of 320 with buildings of about 220,000. But I was just curious to know what that sale was, if anyone knew offhand. Well, we can take that offline if it's.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, I need to take that offline. Sure. We do typically require some assets during the year. I can't offhand say exactly what that's for. So thank you. Good question.
Just on that, can you ensure that the response to the question is copied to the councillors?
Yes.
Thank you.
And just above that, there's an increase in development fees against budget, and I did touch on this with the CE at a previous meeting, and I'm assuming that's is that just levels of business going up? Yeah, okay, that's cool. And B was purchase of debt funding increase. So the debt funding was actual 12. Sorry, the decrease. We had budgeted 21 million and it decreased down to 12. Is that just not getting our capital works program completed?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor, well done. This particular funding impact statement is one of those nuances to local government. It is particularly hard to understand. Effectively, what this statement is trying to say is how much funding do you get from rates? Yeah. How much of that funding are you spending on operating expenses? In terms of your CapEx, how much of that is funded from development contributions? How much is it funded from NZTA subsidies? And how much is funded from additional debt? And there's some balancing numbers to make it balance. So your question relates to, basically, it's trying to set out by how much have you increased your borrowings for the year to fund your capital project. Yep. So we set the budgets. As you know, our capital works program, if we in the likely event that we're going to carry over, because there's been some delays beyond our control, we aren't able to spend the planned full program. Generally speaking, our debt drawdown is less. Our debt drawdown will also be less if our subsidies that are going into our capital program are higher, and that's what's happened.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you. I noticed the increase in reserves just down the bottom of the page there. I'm just curious, are those reserves a cash fund, or are they just a book entry as such? Many years ago, all our jam jar accounting was done away with. We have one bank account. This is talking about earlier, Councillor Coots asked about the Waikanae Capital Improvement Reserve. So we've got a number of special restricted reserves and special funds. So, for example, when we incur expenditure that relates to one of those reserves, we record it as an expense. So it goes through the comprehensive revenue and expenses as an expense. And then us simple accountants will then come back afterwards and go, well, that actually relates to that reserve, which is not a cash entry, it's an accounting entry. So we unwind the reserve and put it back to ratepayers' accumulated funds. So the ratepayers effectively, it's revenue less expenses, and then the net result goes into the pot for ratepayers. But we effectively, if there's a special reserve, then ratepayers shouldn't be funding that, so we unwind it. So it's basically just a transfer. It's an accounting entry. We could have a session on it, but it's basically just making sure that we have special reserves for special purposes, and we do some entries in the accounting books to make sure that ratepayers are not disbenefited from that. Cool, that's lovely, thank you. And just one last question, I think. Page 136 refers to Air Chatham's. Council provided a $500,000 concessionary loan. I was just wanting to know whether that had been drawn down on, and it talks to, it's a 5-year loan, whether there was any structure for a repayment if it had been.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. So, yes. What the financial statements are showing is that loan has indeed been drawn down. It is a 5-year, up to 5-year interest-free loan. It's a concessionary loan. You will also note that there will be a disconnect. The commentary talks to 500, but the financial statements say 419, and that's the time value of money. $1 today is worth 90 cents, for example, in 2 years' time. So what we've done is we've discounted the loan, so the loan's repayable in 5 years' time. So 500,000 may be repayable in 5 years' time. So accounting for the time value of money, that's equivalent to 419,000 today. It's a requirement. It's a financial accounting requirement that you record your assets and liabilities at fair value.
And do we have is there a structure in place for that repayment, or is that?
Chief Executive.
that stuff's not public, so we can't talk about any of the terms.
But
Okay.
the councillors are aware of the arrangement from before, when originally the decision was made. Yeah.
That's it from me. Thank you very much.
Right. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've got a few questions, and I'll start off with just asking a further question in relation to what Councillor Halliday said. So you were talking about ratepayers and in relation to reserves, and you're saying that ratepayers aren't disadvantaged. So is that actually ratepayers in a particular area or ratepayers throughout the whole district?
So when we talk about, through you, Mr. Mayor, we talk about the council as a whole. So in terms of the annual report, we're talking about council, the whole organisation. So an example to step you through, so we have, for example, a LTP reserve. So say, for example, that reserve has $100 in it, and we go and spend, and it builds up over time. So we grow that fund over 3 years. We know we've got an LTP coming up in 2 years' time, and we budget to grow that fund. So we have $100 in that reserve. And on our balance sheet, we have what's called, you have assets, you have liabilities, and you have equity. Now, within the equity suite of accounts is what's called accumulated funds for ratepayers, which effectively is the net difference between revenue and expenditure. So down in equity, we have what's called a LTP reserve, and we have $100 in there. During the year, we spend $50 on something related to the long-term plan. So what happens in terms of accounting, if we had nothing, then the ratepayers' accumulated funds would go down by 50. We've spent $50, we've recognised it as expense, so the ratepayers' equity goes down by $50. But what we're saying is no, actually there's a special reserve sitting in equity that's for that purpose. So we reduce the LTP reserve by 50, and we top up the ratepayers' accumulated surplus by 50. So it benefits all of the ratepayers, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you. So, so then I'll go back to the beginning of the document, which is a great document. Thank you. So, in relation to Councillor Coots's comment on page 42 in relation to the arrows, I'm wondering one way that it could be presented is having the percentage there now, and in brackets having the percentage that it's actually dropped, as so having the percentage as well as the down arrow rather than just the down arrow.
So through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, thank you, Councillor. We'll take this offline. We'll bring it back to the editorial committee. But you know, with the passage of time, it strikes me that we would just actually put that arrow. We've got in brackets, so we're telling you what the result was in the prior year, and it strikes me that that arrow could be a bit smaller, and it could be within the brackets.
Okay, thank you. So then moving on to page 80, so here it talks about community partnership projects, and it's talking about the Waikanae River project, and it says here including mana whenua focused on improving the Waikanae River catchment. So this partnership is actually ongoing. The wording there sounds as if it was a one-off. This is a long-term, well, relatively long-term project. And then on page 82, maybe it wasn't 82. There's another page around that area there somewhere that talks about the pump track in Waikanae and saying it's in partnership with council. Maybe it was on the same page. No. And what I'm saying is, what I'm suggesting, oh yes, so it is actually on page 80 that it says the pump track was delivered in partnership with the Waikanae Community Board. I think probably it is a partnership, but I think it's important to actually say in there that the Waikanae Community Board contributed financially 50,000K, not necessarily the amount, but that they also contributed financially. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? No.
Mr. Mayor, can I just
Yeah.
say one more thing?
Mark.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you everyone for your comments. So in terms of the process now, is we'll go away and we'll work these up, and we'll work through, subject to approval of the document today and the recommendations, we'll work with the editorial committee. What I did want to labour a point, in the 5 years that I've done an annual report, never ever have we had at this time our auditors have never ever signed the audit opinion for the version before you today. There is a formal process whereby if you do adopt the annual report, the Mayor and the Chief Executive have to sign what's called a letter of representation, which is effectively a letter saying we've opened our books, we've told you everything, nothing has happened to suggest there's any changes, and we're happy with everything. And it's typically only at that point Ernst & Young will actually release a signed audit opinion. Now, at the Audit and Risk Subcommittee meeting on the 2nd of November, the auditors commented on the strength of the annual report, and again, I've never seen audit, particularly EY, release a signed audit opinion before Council has adopted. So it just I guess reiterates and should give you comfort how comfortable auditors are in addition to the subcommittee with this annual report.
Right. On that note, would somebody like to move recommendations 23 to 26? Moved by Councillor Holborough, seconded by Councillor Coates. Right of intro.
Yeah, thank you for the annual report. Thanks for that last comment, Mark, and I think it speaks volumes to the quality of this report and the quality of the work that's been going on over the past year that's covered in this report. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Brian and Gary for their hard-working contribution to the Audit and Risk Committee, and certainly it really helps for this report to go through that process before it comes to the table here. And we had quite a robust session during that meeting, and I haven't had any questions today because I had an opportunity to ask them then. And thank you for incorporating some of the suggestions that I made. A little note, we might want to say the Netherlands instead of Holland, just in case. There's the odd Dutch person out there who comes from outside the Holland area who has a problem with that. But just such a readable, approachable and thorough report, and tells it like it is. You know, not everything's perfect, but yeah, things are going really well, and I think that's reflected in this report. So it's my pleasure to recommend it to Council today.
Right, open for debate. Councillor Coates.
Yeah, look, the challenge of being on the treadmill on the day-to-day work of Council, whether I guess you're an employee, whether you're an elected member, is appreciating the length and breadth of the work that is done, and having sort of diligently read through the however hundreds of pages the report was over the last few days. Even for me as a councillor, you know, there were things here that I was like, oh, I didn't actually know that we did that. What it did for me was actually highlight how much the council does, and you know, you might say that I know that or we know that, but it just reinforces the work that not the elected members from a governance perspective, but actually the operations arm of the council, the staff do out there in the community, and the delivery of that. And although, you know, some aspects of that in terms of the residents' opinion survey is down, in terms of not the work that the staff do, but the overall satisfaction, the report demonstrates the delivery of a heck of a lot of staff in very challenging times. And so I do want to acknowledge that. I think that the comment that you've made from Ernst & Young again reinforces the impressive work that the organisation has done throughout the district over the year, and I think it's worth mentioning. So to Wayne and the team, to SLT and to the staff, I think it certainly reflects a job well done, you know, across the district on behalf of the ratepayers.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to take comments made by my colleagues. Yeah, very good, very readable report, and a very good end to a very challenging year that it covers. I was hoping for a nice, relaxing, quiet summer for all of us. However, page 14 suggests that might not be happening, as it says the library collections were not able to be refreshed and planned due to overseas availability and supply issues. I'm now hoping that we're not facing another book budget / campaign over the summer. So let's hope the public don't catch onto that one. And it's a joke.
Then it's a joke. Thank you for that. Everybody laugh. Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, kia ora. I'd also just like to talk all of the comments that have previously been made, and also to really agree with the fact that it's incredibly well put out, set out, and easy to read. And I know that it's will be a resource that I can help to explain the finances to my friends with. And so that's a cool thing. Is I'm planning on printing out a few of the pages, and some of my friends ask me about rates, and they ask me about council budgets and all of that. And this is just a great way of explaining it in a diagram. So
Cool.
Although it's within many pages, there are some really readable things in there that I think will assist us in communicating and telling the story to our community, which we know is something that we need to keep doing and keep improving. So thanks for providing a great resource as well for us to continue to tell that story, and for me to tell my friends the story as well. So thank you.
Councillor Holiday.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Look, I also endorse Councillor Coote's opinion and the comments with regards to the quality of the report. I found it very interesting. The changes have made it a lot more understandable, which I appreciate. Look, I just wanted to acknowledge COVID and its impacts, both operational and on the community and the well-beings. Look, we've got hardships that have been developing in the community, which we have to be conscious of, and this is a potential to grow exponentially as COVID impacts when it arrives. It will exacerbate an already stressed situation, so businesses' incomes, business as usual, will be heavily impacted, and they'll have numerous negative effects flowing on amongst our community. So I just wanted to flag that it is coming. We've had a challenging year already. That's more likely going to get more challenging as well. And of course, housing, but won't flog that horse because we know about the ins and outs of all that as well. But thank you very much.
Right. Any other councillors before I ask Mr. Jackson? I almost made him a councillor.
Oh, Your Worship, I was just going to say one of the most encouraging things for me today was talking to the Chief Executive and Mark on the basis that they are now saying, how are we going to make this better, this report? And to me, that is a great signal, because it means we're not going to just sit there and say, that's done. We're now going to say, how can we actually make it better? And I think that's the best message.
Very good. Right. Recommendations 23 to 26 moved by Councillor Holbrook, seconded by Councillor Coates. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Well done.
Thank you.
Break. Is lunch here?
Are you going to dig into it big time?
What? We'll find out, shall we? Shall we go on to the next item?
Or do you want to take a break?
Yep, let's do the next one. Item 9.2.
Can I just say, so I've just noticed that it's come up as a report, but it actually needs to be here. So that's just my bad. So if you...
No, but you've got the numbering all right down here.
Pardon?
The numbering's all fine.
Yeah. So...
I'll just go through, don't worry about it.
Okay. This is just for you to note that is there. So you can still say confirmation. We'll just... That should have been populated here. So it's fine that it's there. It's still a report.
Yes.
But you just say report 9.4 will go as item 10 or whatever.
This is actually same?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, yeah, okay. So both are same.
Yep.
Okay. Right. Oh, hello. Item 9.2, submission to the Ministry of Environment on the transition to low emissions and climate resilient future. Sounds good. Brandy.
Good morning, everyone. Sophie Hanford's going to introduce our report today.
Kia ora, Brandy, and kia ora, Ninka, and other members of the team in this space. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce the report as well. I appreciate that. So today we are receiving the submission to the Ministry for the Environment on transitioning to a low emissions and climate resilient future. So a bit of background to the emissions reduction plan, if you're not already aware. This is a plan which will set out how New Zealand will meet its first emissions budget, so between 2022 and 25, and set the path towards meeting our long-term climate targets. It's a key step in the country's transition to a low emissions future. So this submission today that is on our agenda is our thoughts on the consultation document, and also providing some various solutions from our perspective too, as a top carbon reducing organisation in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I'd just like to extend my thanks to Brandy and the team for allowing me the opportunity to feed into the submission. So I would just like to assure councillors that I've had the opportunity to provide comments and feedback, and so has the Kapiti Climate Change Action Group and other members from those groups. So it's been a really awesome process of collaboration, actually, I see this as being. And we also heard Pat's comments, someone who submitted to us this morning on the transport bylaw, who also wanted to commend staff. You weren't in the room, but he said that he noticed that this was on the agenda later in the meeting and wanted to commend us for developing such an in-depth submission, and he said that he fully endorsed and he said that our submission was a lot more in-depth and better than his own. So I'd just like to pass that on as well. We're starting to see, I think, too, a real integration of climate change, the impacts and opportunities across council through how many teams were able to feed into this report as well. So just like to thank the other teams who also provided input into the submission today. So the submission, and hopefully you've all had the chance to read it, does draw on the lessons we have learned as a council, and it doesn't only respond to the questions in the consultation document, but it provides examples and also kind of illustrates some of our success stories and how these could be built on by central government. We also suggest a number of actions that central government can take to support local government in encouraging emissions reductions at the local level. So we really, I think, make a strong case that local government has an important role in helping Aotearoa to meet its targets, but that we would require and would love some extra support from central government to make that a reality, because we know that mitigation at the local level is really important, and that we know our communities, and we are kind of privy to those opportunities on a day-to-day basis of how we can enable greater mitigation at a local level. So I think I'm really proud of this submission. I'm proud of the work that the team has done in putting it together. It's a really awesome piece of work, and I think it really encompasses the solutions but also the challenges, and provides some solutions from our perspective to those challenges. And I just want to again kind of reinforce the urgency and wanting to make sure that this specific submission, but also the climate crisis as an issue, but also as an opportunity to create a world that we can feel proud to pass on, is getting the emphasis that it needs. So through, the oral submission of this, and hopefully we have the opportunity to do that, but also just through the work that we continue to do, we know that the climate crisis is right here and right now, and that if we don't take action within the next kind of 8 or so years to halve our emissions, then as we know, it's just this impeding threat that puts at risk this entire collective home that we share. So again, thank you so much for putting this together. And I made a few comments to feed into the development of it, but when it was brought to me, it was already really, really incredibly well put together. So would just like to thank again Brandy and Ninka for their work, and we will, I would encourage you all to support this going to MFE. Kia ora.
Yes, it's almost the right of intro to the Brandy.
I really have nothing further to add. I just did want to point out, of course, as you'll note in my report and my recommendations, as always, happy to incorporate feedback, but MFE has already given us a 1-day extension, so we have to have this to them by the end of the day today. So just please take that in mind, but I'd love to hear any thoughts that you have.
Can I start by asking yourself, and perhaps Sophie would possibly respond also. Given the work that's been done by staff, does it reinforce the views that we don't actually need, we wouldn't have needed a specific climate change committee, that the in-house capacity of the staff working with portfolio holder and community representatives in this area have been quite able to produce an integrated, and when I say integrated, it's a continuing process. Are we happy that we've been able to do that without creating another layer of what would have been a bureaucracy? Sophie.
Well, I think in this instance it's worked extremely well, but I personally would have loved the opportunity for other councillors, if there was a space for that to happen, for other councillors to feed directly into this. For example, Councillor Elliott with the Sustainable Waste Minimisation portfolio, Councillor Pravanov with her Environmental Wellbeing portfolio. So there are, I think, there is kind of a greater need to bring together those various cross-sections of the portfolios. So that would be my kind of one comment, but acknowledging that this has worked well in this specific instance, and it does normally work really well. I really enjoy working alongside as much as I possibly can, Brandy and Ninka and the rest of their team. So, I think there's always kind of ways that we can better bring together those various cross sections of portfolios. But in this instance, it's worked really well. Yeah.
No, I think it's a point well taken. That's why I said it's an ongoing integration. Therefore, there are other portfolios that fit in. I mean, inevitably, the work that we do is holistic at the end of the day. The other question that I had was, I stopped counting the number of times where the submission refers to the need for central government funding. Am I right? Have you counted?
No, but I know it is a lot.
Yes. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would just like to endorse what's been said by the Mayor and Councillor Hanford. Brandy, another very good report that you presented to us. And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to second Councillor Hanford's resolution.
Noted. She hasn't moved yet, but Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, great submission, and I think the comments that Sophie has made highlight that in terms of the other feedback as well. Don't have anything to add to that, but one of the things that I've been raising around submissions that we are making to central government is the feedback in terms of the effectiveness of that submission, because we do spend lots of time making submissions, and it's not a criticism on the staff, but actually have no idea whether, the 10 things that we raise, whether they implemented one of them. So from my perspective, it would be great if it doesn't need to be a full report back to council, but whether somehow, some way, elected members are aware of whether that submission made a difference and it resulted in a change to, what they're putting out at the other end. So I'm not too sure.
Mr. Mayor, can I say one thing in response to that?
Please do.
The last submission that I worked on for council was the submission to the Climate Change Commission. And I don't think it's been discussed with you at this point, but the Climate Change Commission has recently contacted us because they wanted to come and speak to you personally. And I know Tanika's here today, but just today we're trying to find a time when we could present that opportunity to you and have them come to a meeting. So that makes me think, actually, yes, they did in fact read your submission. And I understand that the Climate Commission Chair has also read the Mayor's articles where he's made reference to the Climate Change Commission, and it has drawn their attention, and they do want to come and speak to you. So every submission we make, do we make a lot of impact? I'm not always certain, but they certainly wanted to come and speak to Capity, and that's something we're trying to organize for you. Yeah.
Councillor Holbrook.
Thank you very much for an outstanding submission, and thanks to Councillor Hanford for the work that she put in. So is this going to be now considered by the Environment Select Committee? Is that the next step? Who is it considered by?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, even though I did put in here that we'd like an opportunity to speak to the submission if we're able to do so, this is through the Ministry for the Environment. And so it does not actually go to the Select Committee. It's not going back to Parliament. It's literally going to the team in MFE that is writing the emissions reduction plan. They will go through the process, and earlier in the year, that we're hoping they will. It's not clear that they're going to ask for a second round of feedback, but then they will start to actually draft the plan that I believe has to be completed by, there's the deadline in my report. It's by the middle of next year.
That's fantastic. It's certainly an interesting process with all those 114 questions.
Yes.
So just, are we doing this the same way through you, Mr. Chair? of any suggestions coming through question time rather than debate? Is that?
If you like.
Yeah, I'm aware that this is due tomorrow, so today. So I don't know if it's possible to implement this, and if not,
Well, I think
no
you should
problem
just make some
whatsoever.
suggestions. If they can, they could. If not, they can't.
Yeah, so I just got to the end of the submission, and by the end of the submission, I had a list, which was sewage, sludge, volumetric charging, community solar initiatives, public transport, procurement and design of facilities, and then I found them all in the appendices. I'm just wondering if there's a way to reference those things more clearly through the submission, because I know that when I read submissions, it's a bit like the pyramid structure. You know, you read what's up front first and take less and less notice as you go along. And some of those things that we're doing, I think, are really valuable and a really good example to other councils around the country about the kind of initiatives that can be done. So I'm not sure if that's... I did notice, for instance, on page 41, there was a reference back to the submission, to the appendix, but I got to the end and I hadn't kind of noticed those things.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think an easy response to that would be in that paragraph where I do refer to Appendix 2, I can just simply write then in there, bullet each of those items that you refer to and say there's more information in Appendix 2.
Yeah, I think
would that work?
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic because that brings that information up to the front a bit. The only thing that was missing a little bit for me, and I'm not sure if it's within council kind of mandate, but the opportunities for climate mitigation on surplus government land and how councils might be involved in that. You know, for instance, the surplus land around Transmission Gully and the Wainui Whenua group that's been set up and supported by council, and some of those outcomes being strong environmental outcomes as well as opportunities for housing and things like that. I wonder if we could pop in a quick paragraph about that this afternoon. I don't know if that's possible, but doesn't need to be much, but I think there's huge opportunities with the way that government disposes of surplus land, looks at surplus land in terms of not just opportunities for housing and other development, but also environmental outcomes.
That would be a very quick add. I absolutely get what you're saying, and I can quickly add a paragraph to that.
Yeah, of course you can. Brandy, thank you. No, a fantastic submission, and thanks to all who've put so much work in. Thanks.
Councillor Elliott, did you? Okay. I've got I'm looking at paragraph 8, the question of Mana Whenua submissions, the EV and Hapu Capricorns. Do you know if they have or they intend to do? If it's so, it will be quite useful for councillors to have a look at them. Any other questions? No. So I'm assuming that recommendation 2829 has been moved by Councillor Hanford, and Councillor Bernie Randall has taken the flag as a seconder. Right of second intro. Open for debate. Councillor Elliott.
Well, thank you very much, staff and the team, for working on the submission. I'm really delighted to see a few particular points. One is finally the proposing of setting reduction targets for biogenic methane emissions. I mean, that's very powerful, and we really need to get onto that. It is very much a priority that's been ignored and playing second fiddle to the carbon emissions. And paragraph 19, great to see the recommendations for a rebate scheme like Warmer Kiwi Homes to and promote the uptake of solar energy production for houses. That's fantastic and really needed. We need to grow up with this and get them moving. And also love to hear the comments about MFE. Beginning of the month, I spent an entire morning in a workshop with them on Zoom, just talking about the work behind the National Waste Strategy and Waste Minimisation Act. The MFE people were so open to discussion and sitting down, putting their sleeves up and really nutting out solutions. So well done and good luck to you all. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Compton.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the comments that have been made throughout this in terms of the quality of the submission. I think we're very fortunate in Kapiti, in not just that we have one of the climate change commissioners living in our community, but we actually have an incredibly deep pool of very talented and knowledgeable specialists in this area, and national and international leaders as well who live here, and we're very fortunate as well to have one of them sitting around the council table with us as well, which I think puts us in a really good stead in terms of our council's ability to be a thought leader in this space and to help lead the rest of local government in terms of our participation and pushing central government on the things that they need to change to enable us to play a greater role in addressing the climate crisis. So I just want to add my support and commend everyone who's been involved in putting this together.
Councillor Holliday.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, actually, I'd like to endorse Councillor Compton's words. I think I like that we've partnered with those groups in putting this submission together, and it's great that we're able to lean on that expertise being offered by the community. And seems to be sort of a developing theme. I thought I'd look at the EDKB and the experience that's come through there as well. So us partnering with community seems to be offering some good benefits to the table as well. And they're all part of our community, and they all want to see us in a better Kapiti and in a better environment. So, yep, and noting what Councillor Hanfield was saying about it would be nice to have had the other councils across departments, but in the same token, I'm very comfortable with the expertise that these groups have in representing us as a community as part of that equation as well. Thank you.
Right, anybody else? No. Recommendations 28 and 29 moved by Councillor Hanford, seconded by Councillor Randall. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against is carried. Thank you very much, Randy. Right, item number 9.4, which is actually the same as item 10. Oh, pardon? Oh, sorry, 9.3, recommendations from standing committees and community boards. Yeah, because I see there's a slight change in the format, isn't it? Which is quite good. Am I right? There's a slight change in the format?
Slight change in the format. No, thanks. I have a question.
You want to talk to it?
I have a question. I think what we did was slight improvement in it, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, good. We was just asking if we might want to speak to the change in the
Maureen.
standing orders.
Kia ora koutou. So I'm here to present the report on reports and recommendations from standing committees and community boards. And I understand that the Mayor would like me to talk about a small change in the format.
Yeah.
So we've just tried to bring the report more in line with the reports that come up, the reporting template that normally comes up. So in terms of just speaking through some of the policy considerations, tangata whenua considerations, etc. Yes.
Right, I've got questions. Katie Spires.
Thank you. This is just a question in principle and it's not a criticism, but just wondering, why does it take so long for reports to come to council around the council table? Some of them here are 4 months old. And I'm asking because when community boards make a request from councillors for the councillors, by the time it gets to the council table, the train's already left the station.
Yeah, I can apologise for that as well. It's something that we're thinking about for the upcoming year, and we will be looking to get these up to council a lot more regularly.
That's good. Thank you for that, Community Board Chair Katie Spires. Right, would somebody like to move recommendations 19 to 22?
Oh, I've got a question.
Oh, Councillor Hanson.
Sorry. I just note that you've referred to the Youth Council as the Kapiti Youth Council. They tend to call themselves the Kapiti Coast Youth Council, a very minor thing, but just their Instagram is KCYC, so yeah, just to fit in with how they normally refer to themselves.
No problem, we'll get that updated as well. Sorry.
Right, who's moving? Councillor Halliday, you've got a
Through you,
question.
Mr. Chair, just one question I had. This it says here, number one, the report presents reports and recommendations considered by standing committees and community boards. In regards to community boards, if they do have recommendations that they sent through to council, should they be included in this report as part of the report back on the on what the community boards were wanting to have actioned in regards to council? I'm not talking about their day-to-day activity as such, but if they've made a recommendation or something that's come through to council, should that be captured here? I'm just not too sure where it does generally get captured as such.
Yes, so when a recommendation is made at a community board, within the minutes we pull those through where a recommendation is made to council. So and that's why you'll note in this one that there is a report, a recommendation that's come through from the Waikanae Community Board, for example.
You right? Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as just actually been pointed out, the Waikanae Community Board did make a recommendation to council, but I note in the recommendations that it's actually for council to note, and I would like to foreshadow a change to that recommendation that it actually agrees with the recommendation of the Waikanae Community Board.
Can I just suggest that there's a paper that's coming?
I appreciate that,
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, so there's no reason why it shouldn't be agreed with then.
Well, I think noted means it covers your recommendation, and then we know there's a paper that's coming within that 12-month period.
So I think, Mr. Mayor, we've had this conversation before. Noting doesn't actually, basically means that there's no need to actually action what the recommendations are.
This is question time. I will consider that.
Thank you.
No, there's no motion being put at the moment. Can I just ask for some advice from the Chief Executive? Can the Chief Executive clarify there is a report coming, but we don't know, like this December? Am I right? On the 9th. Sean, there's a report that's coming, right?
So yes, there is the report that was requested on options for rural recycling and also the look at the waste collection is coming back on the 9th of December, yes.
So what I'm fearful is until we get the full report, I'm not sure that the recommendations here will contradict what the report will say. We want the information first, and then it will be better for a move or resolution be made at that time if you're not agreeable in terms of what the recommendation or the report says. So it will just be prudent to wait for that and not breach the process. Councillor Pravanov.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Sean, for providing information about when a report will be coming forward. But that is actually not what has been requested by the Waikanae Community Board. And, you know, I hear what you're saying in terms of allowing time to see what comes forward, because this recommendation to council is within the next 12 months. It's not actually saying in the next few months. So it's a case of where what comes forward will obviously be considered, but if it doesn't meet the requirements, then by actually council agreeing to this recommendation, it will then be followed up.
Well, it would be more prudent if you wait until the report is tabled, and then this is, because it says notes, it's still alive. And at that point, you can then raise the issue as to the direction you want to take.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor, but as we have learnt to our detriment around this table before, when something is noted, there's absolutely no obligation for it to be acted on.
Chief Executive.
Equally, the council can't agree to do something without a report to inform it, and there is no report here to inform it. So I cannot support a recommendation asking the council to agree something that it hasn't had a report upon.
So all I'm saying is this a prudent process? There is a report coming. This is noted, which means the intention of you activating this still is alive. So at that point that the report lands, is the time you see whether this dovetails. You can put a resolution at that time to say what you want done.
So there is no request for a report in this recommendation. It's actually for some actions.
That's precisely the point.
So if I may, Mr. Mayor, as I just said, and that is not something that is appropriate for any council or committee to do, is to pass resolutions without a report to fully inform a decision of council or committee.
So it's a case of where, then if necessary, a report has to be done?
Yeah, okay. Let's just cut it to the chase. If you want to move to make that as a recommendation, do so and we'll just test it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other issues? Councillor Randall.
Yeah, I mean, I endorse what Councillor Pravanov said. If she's moved a resolution, I'm prepared to second it. I know from history, going back through trienniums, that the way these resolutions were phased then, when I was on the community board, are completely different now. As Councillor Pravanov said, it's just notes. It's like our petitions. People come here and present a petition, and what's the follow-up? You know, what is in there in our standing orders and council process for the person, you know, how the petition is handled. So I fully support what Councillor...
Look, I've already provided a direction to Councillor Pravanov as to how to manage this. So any other questions? Councillor Coates.
I appreciate you've given that signal to Councillor Pravanov to test it. And trying to be helpful, I do have a question. When I read the recommendation from the community board, I did wonder whether it is slightly different to the report that comes back to council that's been requested. However, I also agree that we wouldn't really want to agree to other work if that report helps inform and could potentially address that. So is there a way that we can, I mean, firstly, will staff have any opportunity to action any recommendation, given that we're in the last week of November, you then go into December and January? So my point is, you know, probably nothing will happen really for 2 or 3 months anyway. Is there a way that we can accept the report that is coming from Sean's team? And then if the report doesn't satisfy or address some of the concerns raised here, there could be a further recommendation when that report is presented that could then enact or address some of the concerns raised in this. So I'm just not in favour of supporting a recommendation here when we've got the other work
That's right.
potentially coming that may or may not address the concerns from the community board in its recommendation. So it's partly a timing issue. Is there a way that we can kill two birds with one stone? Receive the report that I think is on the 9th. It's not a debate, I'm questioning.
That's all right. We just want I want an outcome. Chief Executive.
Mr. Mayor, can we bring this back after the lunch break and we'll have a discussion about it? Because making this up on the fly and answering stuff that people are proposing isn't helpful. We could have a conversation about it, see where we land, try and make sure it's a solution that everybody's happy with. The report for the 9th will be largely complete by now. I would have thought it will cover this territory, but I haven't seen the draft report. And I would agree with the Mayor's initial comments that in debate over that report would be the place to ask for things if the report doesn't traverse the territory that you wish. Sean is probably indicating that it probably does cover the territory that you wish due to the previous debates. But in terms of how to resolve this resolution, I think we should probably just take a break.
Sean, you got anything else to add? No. Look, we come back after lunch for this. Can we finish the other ones?
That's my point. You've got more items to debate, Mr. Mayor. I think share the lunch break and come back.
Yeah.
We'll dismiss rural and provincial.
So we'll just take a break for lunch now.
Also, just to be aware, we've got waste levy at 1:30, so we may have to start that and then.
Oh, you got the. No, okay. So we're Jim. Just okay. Look, we've heard that. Look, that there's a report coming on the 9th. It's prudent to wait until then you can sort it out. If you want to test this, Councillor Brownhoff, I suggest that you test now on that resolution 21.
Yep, fair enough.
Pardon?
We're getting some logs around to test it.
Test it. Okay. No, we are going to test this now.
So I'd like to move recommendations 19 to 22 as they stand in the council agenda.
Okay. Recommendation 19 to 22, moved by Councillor Holbrook, seconded by Councillor Compton. All those in favour say aye.
Against.
Oh, you want to debate?
I'd like
Right
to
of intro, sorry. Right of intro.
Yeah, so I just had a couple of things I wanted to draw out from the report. First of all, it mentions Hannah Neal resigning from or finishing up with the Youth Council. And I just want to take this opportunity at this meeting to acknowledge the huge amount of work and contribution that Hannah's made through the Youth Council and also through Zeal. She started the Musicians Lounge there, and her energy and enthusiasm and commitment to both of those groups has just been so invaluable. So I just wanted to take that opportunity to do that. Also acknowledge the huge amount of work that's going on with the Youth Council, and it would be nice to have an update from the Youth Council at some point soon. We haven't had one for a little while. That would be really lovely. I also wanted to kind of a little bit it's not quite mentioned here, but there was an interim chair appointed at Te Whakaminenga, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the previous chair, Rupani Waka, for the huge contribution that he's put into that committee over so many years, because I don't think we did that at the last meeting where we considered these reports and recommendations. He was recognised very fulsomely and wonderfully with a Civic Award earlier this year, so just huge thanks to both of those people who are indirectly or directly referred to in this report. Thank you, and it's my pleasure to move the recommendations as they are. And yes, I think it's great that the Waikanae Community Board have brought this issue to the table and that their opinion is expressed. And I look forward to the report that's coming very soon to Council to address this very issue. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Pravanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would like these recommendations to be taken separately, and as I foreshadowed before, I would like to amend recommendation 21 to replace the word noted with agrees to. As we've heard that the report coming to the table in December is more about rural recycling rather than Waikanae, so I'm not sure that it is actually going to address the issues that have raised by the Waikanae Community Board. If it does cover those matters, then by agreeing to this recommendation, it will be completed. If they are not agreed to, then there's still further work that Council is required to do over the next 12 months.
So, Councillor Pravanoff, you're testing recommendation 21. The amendment you're saying is changing notes to what?
Agrees to.
Agrees to. Have you got a seconder for your amendment?
Yeah,
No, I'm going to take that one first.
So if I may, my advice to the chair is that this amendment get voted on now, and then subject to the result of that, you can probably do the whole lot as the substantive.
So you've spoken to your amendment just now.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Randall. Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, are we just speaking to the amendment or the whole? No.
The amendment.
Yeah, I'll leave that in.
Thank you. Look, I'm seconding this amendment because for a few reasons. Firstly, we have a process problem here. We need to empower community boards. Noting the recommendations does not empower them at all, and I think this is something that we really need to change, and actually change in action, not just change in words. But secondly, the report coming back was about rural recycling, and I'm also think that this is a very sensible, pragmatic way to ensure that the conversation about Waikanae's recycling takes place. And thirdly, the council voted to close the Waikanae recycling facility without a report. Just remembering that. Thank you.
Councillor Compton.
Yeah, so I won't be supporting the amendment, and the reason for that is that the report we have coming back on the 9th is going to address those concerns that were raised, and that was something I raised at the time. We had that discussion about that, and also when we had, what was it, 2 or 3 months ago, where we discussed what that report was actually going to contain, and I pushed for it to actually consider that broader picture as well. So that's why I'm not going to be supporting it. I understand what the councillors are trying to achieve with this, but I think what they're trying to address is going to get addressed when that report comes back to us. So I won't be supporting this amendment.
Councillor Holbrook.
Yes, I won't be supporting this amendment either. I do understand the issue of noting recommendations rather than agreeing to them. In this case, I'm just a little bit concerned that this leads us to a financial impact on council, which we haven't properly considered, and making decisions like this on the hoof and in a hurry, to me, is not good decision making. What is good decision making is waiting for a report that will address this issue, that will address any implications for council, and where we can make a better, more full decision about a possible way forward for this issue.
Councillor Coates.
I agree with Councillor Compton and Councillor Holbrook. I won't be supporting the amendment. The community board would have been aware at the time that they had the meeting that the report had been requested regarding recycling services and so forth. Given that the report is just weeks away, I think it'd be more prudent to wait and see the outcome of that report. If there are matters that are not addressed through that report that the ward council or the community board feel need to be addressed, then we can have the discussion at the time. And as we've been advised by staff, further work could be requested to be done and budgeted for and so forth. I don't think, as has been referred to, doing this on the hoof is the best way that we govern. And I think because the report's coming through, we better to wait for that and then make a call from there. So I won't be supporting the amendment.
Councillor Holliday.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I concur with the other councillors who have just spoken. I'm afraid I won't be supporting this. I do fully appreciate the situation that Councillor Pravanov finds herself in with regards to the noting of a recommendation, but we were, at the time that we made the decision, which I supported the removal of the waste recycling from Waikanae, but it was under the proviso that a district-wide approach to waste minimisation, there'll be a report coming back to that, and that's what I see this report as being. I'm happy to revisit this at the other side of that conversation if we're not happy with that outcome, or I would like to see an approach to a satisfying resolution in the space through that process, rather than a specific thing that commits us to a certain amount of consultation, if you like, that's fairly broad in its request at the moment. So yes, I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Pravanov, right of reply.
Thank you. So I don't believe this is actually on the hoof. It's very clear what the Waikanae Community Board has requested. It's just that what is the way it's been dealt with by or in this meeting. And so, yeah, thank you.
Right. The amended recommendation 21, amended by Councillor Pravnov, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? No. Division. All those. Those. Can Chief Executive.
Tanika, is Councillor McCann online or is We're just checking in with Councillor McCann, just in case he's not slipped off the world. He's left the meeting. So those in favour, Councillor Handford, Elliott and Pravanov and Randall.
Those against?
Councillors Halliday, Compton, Buswell, Coots, the Mayor, Councillor Holborough.
Is defeated.
Mr.
I now
Mayor.
go back to.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask if any councillors have a conflict of interest here? It's been raised.
At the beginning of the meeting, all councillors are always asked to declare if they have any conflicts, and it is for individuals to determine that. None have been raised.
I go back to the substantive motion recommendation moved by Councillor Holborough and seconded by Councillor Compton. Recommendation 19 to 22. All right of reply.
So, nobody else debated, so there's no right of reply.
So all those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. Item 9.4 is actually also item 10. The recommendation is, this is the representation review public hearing. Can I ask the chief, Janice, that the reason why this substantial verbatim report is given because this is evidence for potential review by the Commission?
Yes, so it is. It has been our practice to put to Council for adoption records of other hearings processes as well. So we have done that in the past with the LTP, I understand. In this instance, the minutes are, yes, more fulsome, if that's the right word, than what they might otherwise be. And that does reflect, I guess, our intention to provide the Local Government Commission with as much information as possible about the process that has been undertaken.
It's actually quite a good document to go through again for your night reading anyway.
I'm not sure that the person who wrote the minutes would agree, but it was a bit of a gargantuan effort.
Right. Any questions on this? Otherwise, will somebody move recommendation 1? Councillor Compton. Sorry, Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, look, just a question. Or a suggestion. I would love for our minutes to be this fulsome at all times, especially though we don't normally have this many public speakers, but just the fact that having that someone has appeared and what they've talked about is in your opinion, is really important to be, I believe, to be recorded in our official records.
That's obviously not our practice at the moment. To change our practice, I guess, would have a number of implications, and some of them resourcing, but other administrative and practical implications as well. So I guess want to make it clear that that would be a big deal if we were to go to that approach for everything.
Right. So I'm going to move that recommendation 1, the minutes of the representation review public hearings of 19th October 2021 be accepted as true and correct record. Can I have a seconder? Did you? Oh, you moved it. Right. And Councillor Holiday, you seconded it? Right of intro? No? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. we do have public speaking time for items not in the agenda, and I think we've got 2 people. Is Lynn there? After this,
Mr. Sleep, can you hear us?
go for lunch and then come back. Declare public school.
Can you hear me?
I can. So, Mr.
You there?
Sleep's ready.
Lynn, you there? Lynn?
You just need to unmute yourself.
Right, Lynn, you got 3 minutes and then questions.
Lynn, you just need to unmute yourself.
How's that?
That's great, thank you.
Okay, a little bit of character here.
You got 3 minutes and then questions from the councillors. Go for
Thank
it.
you.
Lynn, you need to unmute yourself.
I've just done that.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you.
That's great, thank you.
Kia whanau.
3 minutes and then.
I think you've still got your live stream on.
Thank you.
You need to unmute yourself.
I've just done that. How's that? All right, we've got the technology. Thank you. Kia whanau. You guys had a long meeting, which is nearing the end, so I need to grab your attention. I want to talk a bit about pathways in our town centres. Hands up anyone that has replaced their TV or their cell phone in the last year. None of you guys? Nobody? One. Did anyone buy the same size or the function? I bet you went for an improved model. Maybe you got a bigger TV or a smarter phone. That makes sense by now. A couple of years ago, you guys did a replacement job on the footpath on the north side of Kapiti Road. That's the one that goes from Makarini Street to the school. Pretty important for my whānau who live in those streets. They don't use the flash new pathway on the south side to take their tamariki to school because she got across the road. I watched those jokers digging out the old path right back to the folks' fence. Then they chuck some flash new concrete in, about the same width as before. Then they carefully put back all the folks' nice grass and plants and stuff. So I'm scratching my head and asking, does that make sense on a pretty busy footpath? And I've been reading about your draft growth strategy and intensification. The jokers who are going to live in these flash new places are going to get to the train place and the shop. They might walk or take the bike. But they ain't going to take the Porsche out. Sorry, James. And I've been reading about your open spaces strategy that says that we got to allow for scooters, e-bikes and skateboards. And the whānau are still facing that COVID thing and the social distancing. You can't do any of that stuff on a skinny footpath. Seems a bit crazy to me. And another thing, our friends at Higgins have been working their way up Ramity Strait. They're really slow guys, aren't they? Building a new footpath to the town centre. And guess what? That's only 1.5 metres wide. Bikes and wheelchairs and walkers can't pass safely on a 1.5 path. So I think the council needs to get its thinking updated from the 1960s and start planning for future growth with climate change and COVID-19. Now, I know what you're all going to say. Who's going to pay? Well, I've been reading about that too.
Lynn, you got half a minute.
It seems that Waka Kotahi is handing out lots of cash up and down the country for people that want to build shared spaces in the town. Not just in Tamaki Makaurau, but in little places like Wanganui and Taupo. So I'm asking myself, why can't we have wider paths in Kapiti? Kia ora.
Very good. Questions? Lynn, no questions. Thank you for taking the time to submit to us.
No trouble. My pleasure.
Martin Wild.
Hi, Martin. Can you hear us?
Anne.
No questions before. Yes.
No trouble.
Martin, are you there?
Thanks, everybody.
Martin, you've got 3 minutes and then questions. And you're talking on public.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for time and opportunity.
No questions before.
Martin, you just need to turn off the live stream.
Yes. Okay, let's do that. Thanks, everybody.
Martin, you 3 minutes. Martin,
okay.
Shorthand.
Look, thank you very much for the opportunity. I remember you around our table here at home some years ago. Appreciate the work that you're doing. I just wanted to raise a couple of issues here. One is around public pathways. I live at Ramadi South. I've noted the replacement of the concrete on the seawall. Brilliant. I rued the day when they put the original concrete in because it was substandard and it ended up being probably one of our worst health and safety risks in the area. But the new concrete, brilliant. Two things that come out of it. Because the concrete cracks, I have suggested that the cracks be sealed with bitumen sealant, because as soon as that water gets in, it will lift the concrete. That's what happens. And the second one is somebody has wonderfully gone down there and put a sign that says any vehicles past this point will receive a fine of $150 and put that sign right in the middle of the view. Perhaps a well-meaning contractor did it, but lovely if we could just push that out of the way and enjoy the view instead. And third to that is the walking track that seems to have pretty heavy usage, even though it's got a sign up that says no longer available for walking on. Is there a plan to have that addressed in the reasonable future? Thank you.
Questions? Just people have been preoccupied with Judith Collins, been axed. Anyway, any questions? Look, Martin Wild's waiting for questions. No questions? Councillor Holliday, please.
Thank you for that, Martin. Look, I'm just going to make a suggestion. A few of these issues which we will pick up on, it's perhaps something that needs to come through the community board as well, with regards to things that can be addressed. Perhaps you might be interested in emailing those through to us. We can.
Yes, certainly.
Lovely.
Happy to.
Thank you, Martin. No other questions. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us.
Good night.
Thank you.